On the dark canvas of a night that seemed eternal, when the city lights went out and the silence was broken only by the roar of explosions, the fate of two nations met face to face. It was on that night that Ukraine decided it was time to settle. Scores, sending its vengeance through swarms of drones that soared across the Russian sky, striking where it hurt the most. In the early hours of dawn, while most of the world slept unaware of the imminent escalation, Ukrainian commanders meticulously plotted the plan that would change the course of the war. For months, the strategy had been perfected, and now, with a determination forged in adversity, they prepared to launch the boldest aerial offensive of 2025. The objective was clear: to attack critical infrastructure in Russian territory, weakening the aggressor's war machine and sending an unequivocal message that revenge had a set time and date. In the command center in Kiev, analysts reviewed satellite images, intelligence reports, and real-time data on Russian air defenses. They discussed refineries processing millions of tons of oil, fuel depots vital for the operation of tanks and aircraft, and even missile component factories, each a strategic target that, if damaged, would alter the balance on the front. Thus, with the precision of a Swiss clock, the drones tasked with the mission were activated, while the night became the stage for a new chapter in the war. With an almost otherworldly roar, over 170 drones streaked across the Russian sky in one of the largest aerial incursions recorded in 2025, according to a recent report by the Russian Ministry of Defense. The offensive spanned 13 regions, reaching even the outskirts of the capital, Moscow. At a moment when the air was filled with flashes and smoke, Russian air defenses were forced to respond swiftly and decisively. One of the primary targets was a refinery located in the Ryazan region, considered one of the most important for supplying fuel both to the civilian sector and to Russia's military-industrial complex. The drones penetrated the defensive layers and, within minutes, triggered a series of explosions that shook the facility's structure. The fire quickly spread, generating columns of smoke that soared skyward, while technicians and emergency crews struggled to contain the disaster. Simultaneously, another swarm of drones headed for a fuel depot in the same region. The impact and ensuing explosions not only severely damaged the infrastructure, but also jeopardized Russia's ability to resupply its military vehicles at a critical moment in the conflict. The sequence of explosions and flashes was captured in images that soon circulated online, underscoring the magnitude of the attack. In the Bryansk region, the offensive took on an even more symbolic aspect. The drones concentrated on a missile electronic components factory known as Kolomna. This plant, vital for the production of advanced military technology, had already been targeted in previous attacks, but Ukraine's renewed onslaught demonstrated a renewed determination to undermine Russia's defensive capabilities. With each explosion, the factory was plunged into chaos, and sparks flew like omens of an uncertain future for the enemy. The offensive was not limited to the peripheral areas. The Russian capital, Moscow, also felt the weight of the retaliation. According to reports, air defenses shot down a total of 123 drones over the metropolitan area, with the first devices intercepted in nearby cities such as Kolomna and Ramenskoe, and others downed in Podolsk, just 40 kilometers south of Moscow. Moscow's mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, stated on his social media that the temporary suspension of operations at 3 of the capital's airports, along with similar measures in 6 other cities, Kazan, Nizhnekamsk, Penza, Samara, Saratov, and Ufa, was necessary to prevent further complications. In his words, at the site where the drone fragments fell, according to preliminary data, no damage or casualties were reported, although the mere presence of the attack heightened tensions in the region and demonstrated that even at the heart of the Russian Empire, the threat was very much alive. As the drones faded into the twilight after being shot down, the narrative of revenge was solidified. Ukraine's ability to penetrate Russian airspace and strike strategic targets was celebrated by its supporters, who saw each explosion as a blow against the Kremlin's arrogance. Amid the chaos, the voices of the people and experts began to recount the events with a mixture of astonishment and sorrow. Andriy Kovalenko, from the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, used his social media channels to document the magnitude of the attack. "Many explosions in different regions of Russia," he wrote, revealing the devastation stretching from refineries to high-tech factories. His message resonated with those who had suffered the ravages of years of war and served as a call for unity in the pursuit of a decisive response. In the streets of Moscow, despite the absence of fatalities reported by the authorities, the atmosphere turned somber. Citizens, aware of the vulnerability of their security, shared images and testimonies about the impact of the drones, while officials tried to ensure that the situation remained under control. However, the mere occurrence of these attacks generated a widespread feeling of unease, and many wondered what surprises the following night might bring. In Kiev, President Volodymyr Zelensky seized the moment to reaffirm his nation's determination. In a message broadcast on his Telegram channel, he declared that every drone shot down and every explosion in enemy territory is a step toward liberation, and reminded his compatriots that the struggle was not only for territory, but also for the dignity and freedom of a people burdened by years of aggression. Ukraine's aerial offensive was not a stroke of luck but the result of a carefully crafted strategy designed to exploit the enemy's vulnerabilities. In recent months, the Ukrainian army has invested in the development and refinement of its drone and missile arsenal, reducing its dependence on external supplies and increasing its rapid response capability. Innovations such as the Palyanitsia drone missile have allowed Ukraine to circumvent the Western arms blockade and hit long-range targets within Russian territory. With a range of up to 600 kilometers, this new system has been hailed by analysts as Ukraine's answer to the Western blockade, and its use in recent attacks has demonstrated that technology can be as lethal as the determination of a people who refuse to be subjugated. Moreover, in a context where Russian air defenses are constantly overwhelmed by the sheer number and precision of Ukrainian drones, the strategy is based on swarm attacks, saturating detection systems and allowing at least some devices to reach their targets. This tactic, which has led to the temporary suspension of airport operations and a coordinated military response, is a clear indication of the evolving nature of the conflict. Innovation does not stop at direct attacks. Ukraine's ability to adapt and evolve in the face of a technologically advanced adversary has been a decisive factor. In defense forums and congresses, discussions focus on how the development of indigenous systems, from drones to long-range missiles, can shift the balance in a war where every minute counts and every explosion is a reminder of the cost of aggression. Ukraine's response has transcended the military sphere to send a clear message to the international community. Aggression will not go unpunished. Attacks on key infrastructure in Russian territory have sparked reactions worldwide, from speeches at international forums to adjustments in the security policies of Western allies. As the United States and the European Union analyze the magnitude of the offensive, the figures of downed drones and the explosions at refineries and factories have served as arguments to increase support for Ukraine. Kiev's ability to strike at the heart of the enemy reinforces the narrative that the war is a battle of ingenuity and determination, and that every successful attack weakens the Kremlin's power structure. In public statements, senior Ukrainian officials have emphasized the need for continued reinforcement of air defenses, while measures to accelerate the delivery of protection systems are being discussed in Washington. The geopolitical climate is tense, and there is a growing possibility that new agreements and alliances may form in response to a war that has made it clear that traditional methods are no longer sufficient to counter an unyielding enemy. The attack on the Turk Stream gas pipeline, which connected Russia with the European Union, is another example of how military actions can have repercussions on the global economy. Although the damage was minor, the immediate impact was a significant increase in gas prices in Europe, demonstrating that every explosion has ripple effects that transcend borders. Despite the magnitude of the attacks, life goes on. In Moscow and other Russian cities, the population's response reflects the resilience forged over years of uncertainty. Authorities assure that although the drones have fallen and flights have been temporarily canceled, security is maintained and daily life, though altered, continues. However, in Ukraine, the mood is mixed with both pain and determination. Families that have endured years of bombings and loss now see in every downed drone a symbol of hope and justice. The streets of Kyiv are filled with demonstrations of unity, and the testimonies of soldiers and civilians weave together a narrative that is both a tale of survival and a claim for freedom. One of the most emotional moments occurred when a young pilot, whose identity remains anonymous for security reasons, recounted in an off-camera interview. "Every mission is a risk, but when I see the results, when the enemy falls and their installations turn to rubble, I feel that every sacrifice is worth it." These words resonated deeply with many, reminding them that the struggle is not just for territory, but for the dignity of a people who refuse to be subjugated. Although the drone offensive has marked a milestone in the conflict, the future remains uncertain. Russian forces, despite the losses and wear they have suffered, are reorganizing and reinforcing their defenses. Moscow's authorities have already announced plans to improve air defense systems and reduce vulnerability to future incursions, while analysts debate whether this cycle of attacks and counterattacks will intensify in the coming months. On the other hand, in Ukraine, the success of the offensive has rekindled hope for an eventual victory, or, at the very least, a stronger negotiating position. Military strategists emphasize that every well-executed attack not only causes material damage, but also undermines the enemy's morale and sends a powerful message to the world. Aggression will not go unpunished. Furthermore, Ukraine's ability to develop its own arsenal of drones and long-range missiles has become a central topic in international defense forums. With investments promised by allies and a clear vision of military independence, Kyiv is positioning itself as an innovation hub in times of war, challenging the limitations imposed by the Western arms blockade and betting on self-sufficiency in defense. The narrative of vengeance, though harsh and filled with sacrifice, is also a story of resilience and overcoming. Every explosion, every downed drone, and every damaged piece of infrastructure serves as a reminder of the cost of war, but also of the determination of a people fighting for their future. The night Ukraine decided to respond to Russian aggression with a massive aerial offensive will be recorded in history as a turning point. It was not just a coordinated drone attack. It was the manifestation of a strategy, of technological innovation, and of an indomitable spirit that refuses to surrender. The echoes of that night will be felt not only in military figures or newspaper headlines, but in the lives of those in both Ukraine and Russia who witnessed the transformation of the conflict. In every explosion lies the story of a sacrifice. In every drone shot down, the reflection of a renewed hope. As the world watches with awe and concern, the question remains, is this the beginning of the end of aggression, or merely the prelude to an escalation that will define Europe's future? One thing is clear. In the midst of uncertainty, the determination of a people to reclaim their dignity and freedom remains the most powerful force. In this account, vengeance is not merely an act of reprisal, but the cry of a people who have suffered too much and who, with every attack, come a little closer to justice. And though the war rages on, every downed drone, every explosion, and every piece of damaged infrastructure marks a milestone on the path to a resolution that, though still distant, is built on the courage and innovation of those who dare to face adversity.